What's going on, everybody? We're back. So, we recently had a video talking about the top 10 fantasy quarterbacks for 2020. And that was post-draft, and hopefully that is for your viewership, for you to use for your league, because we want you to do the best in your league. And you're talking about two multi-time champions. We're Super Bowl winners. We're MVPs in our own eyes. You're talking about egos. It's up there with the best of them. So, but listen, we're coming at you now talking about where to actually draft a quarterback, which is much different from who are the best fantasy quarterbacks to draft, right? Because when you're talking about where to draft a quarterback, that makes the most difference for your team, because you're talking about maybe filling up and securing another position in the early rounds, rather than filling it up with maybe the best quarterback in the league with your early rounds and then getting a lesser running back or receiver in the later rounds. So Andrew, when you're thinking about where to draft a quarterback, what's your initial thought?
So I'm a firm believer of the quarterback being a very important spot on your roster, but you don't want to invest too much draft capital in them, because you're only starting one quarterback unless you're doing a super flex league. So in most leagues, you're only starting one quarterback. So positions like wide receiver and running back are very important, and you want to make sure that you're drafting them before you draft a quarterback.
Absolutely. And when you're looking, just for example, let's take a look at, who were the top quarterbacks performing fantasy-wise in 2018 and going into the 2019 season, just to get a glimpse of what people were looking at drafting last year. So you had guys like Matt Ryan, Ben Roethlisberger, Jared Goff, and Phillip Rivers, all in your top 10 performing quarterbacks fantasy-wise in 2018. See, you might look at that and want to draft Matt Ryan at the first or second rounds, but that might not be the option to go towards, because you can get somebody that's very comparable in the later rounds. So why don't you talk about, Andrew, who overperformed their draft position last year?
So when I'm looking at the top 10 list of where quarterbacks finished last year, I'm looking at Dak Prescott. The dude finished number 2 at the quarterback spot, and I guarantee you nobody in the world said, man, Dak Prescott's going to be the top 2 quarterback in fantasy last year. So he completely outperformed. And then also the likes of Josh Allen and Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray is a rookie. When you think of rookie quarterbacks, you think of, they're going to have a growth process. They'll throw a lot of interceptions, this and that. Nobody thought Kyler Murray is going to finish as the 7th overall fantasy quarterback. And if you did, kudos to you, man. And then Josh Allen. When you think of a quarterback, you're not thinking of Josh Allen, let alone Josh Allen as a top 5 fantasy quarterback. He had no elite receivers. He didn't even have an above average receiver to throw to. So when you're looking at it, Josh Allen was being drafted in the double-digit rounds in fantasy drafts, and he finished as the 5th overall quarterback. So there's a lot of talent that gets slept on that performs way above their draft position.
Yeah, I'll throw in a couple more with you as well. And starting off with the number 1 quarterback last year, and that's Lamar Jackson. I mean, the year before that, he sat behind Joe Flacco, and even before that, when he was drafted into the NFL, he was the last quarterback in the first round. He wasn't as high as some people thought. And yeah, there was some hype surrounding him because of how athletic he was and how strong his arm is, but nobody thought that he'd be the number 1 quarterback option. And even if they did, nobody wanted to invest a first round pick, a second round pick, whatever. So this was a guy that was drafted really late. And another one is our boy Matt Stafford. This is a guy that every single year, nobody's taking him in the top 3 rounds, which is logical. Why would you? Because he's had an inconsistent career. He's had coordinators like Jim Bob Cooter, Joe Lombardi that have limited his production. So it's completely understandable. But you can get a guy like that, or a Phillip Rivers, or anything like that, that's comparable to a Matt Ryan, Jared Goff, in the much, much later rounds. And that allows you to open up your options in the early rounds to draft that running back, receiver, and all that. And we're saying this. We obviously know that this has been put out there many times before. This isn't new information to seasoned fantasy players. This is more towards the, beginner level fantasy players. But really, we're talking about this year right now. So let's get into the actual conversation. Andrew, you're looking at guys like Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson that are going to go in the top 3 rounds, okay? But given our advice, we're going to look at, maybe after round 5, maybe after round 6. Who are guys you are specifically looking at? Give me 3 guys you're specifically looking at that are going to be drafted in the later rounds that'll be comparable to those guys in the early rounds.
So it's hard to tell. Everyone's going to take Mahomes and Lamar Jackson in the top 2 rounds. And I know you keep saying, this quarterback's taken the first round, don't take him the second round, whatever. The only reason why Real is saying that is because every single year, whatever quarterback had a monster season the year prior gets taken in the top 2 rounds every single time. And this year, Lamar, Patrick Mahomes, and potentially Russell Wilson are going in like the top 3-4 rounds. Other than that, most people do wait until round like 5, 6, 7 to take some of those other quarterbacks once they see that the very elite quarterbacks are taken. So when I'm thinking a little bit later rounds, I'm thinking around 5, 6, 7. So quarterbacks that I'm looking at in that area are the likes of Matthew Stafford, Dak Prescott, Kyler Murray, and Drew Brees and Tom Brady. Okay. So when I'm thinking of quarterbacks that have a very, very high ceiling, I'm looking at those guys because the factors I'm looking at are who's their surrounding cast, who are they versing, what have they done in the past, and their strength of schedule. So when I look at all of that, all these guys, they have multiple receivers to throw to. Some of those receivers are top 10 receivers, or they have a very good run game, or they're also running quarterbacks, which I am very adamant about. Running quarterbacks are higher value than just passing quarterbacks in fantasy football because of how the point system works. So those type of guys, you're going to get potentially even in the double-digit rounds, and they are performing at a top 10 level, and some of these guys are performing even at a top 3, top 5 level. So to invest such a high pick at a quarterback position when you can get premiums back later, to me is just silly, and it would be a huge mistake.
Absolutely, I 100% agree. So there you have it, guys. If you're a beginner fantasy player, or you're just looking to brush up on your knowledge and get some advice on where to draft a quarterback this year, that's our opinion, man. We want to maximize the value of your picks, and since you can't get an elite level running back or receiver that late, or at least it's very hard to find one, you're gonna want to get one of those guys in the early rounds and get a comparable, very good quarterback with a high ceiling later on, like Andrew just said, with Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Matt Stafford, Matt Ryan, guys like that. And you are not going to miss if you do that. But, we do want to add this one little caveat at the end, right? Obviously, every single draft is situation by situation, right? If Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson ends up falling to maybe the 5th round or something, I'm obviously considering that, or the 4th round even, So it's really situation by situation. Or if there are no, wide receivers or running backs you like, and you really are confident in taking somebody with a high floor, low ceiling. High floor, high ceiling. You might want to take that. So of course it's situation by situation, but in general, we are proponents of the belief that you take a quarterback later on so that you have more options in your early rounds. So there you have it, guys. For more fantasy advice, for more just advice in general about football and where to draft your guys, and we're gonna be pumping out the content. We're gonna be pumping out what free agents to get, sleepers, all that. So definitely subscribe to our channel if you want that advice. Also, if you're a real Detroit Lions fan, of course, subscribe to our channel. And yeah, let's get it.